Well, what is up, Leadership Summit 2024? What an incredible weekend it's been. If you're watching online, hey, we're so stoked to have these available. You can keep watching them later. You can share them with friends. We just want to give you all the tools you can have so that you can lead and be living proof of a loving God to your watching world. My name is Kyle Worsham, and I have the privilege of being the online campus pastor, which kind of makes sense that I'm in one of these sessions. If you've enjoyed it, would you put in the chat when you get back on for our main final session? And just let us know what's been your favorite part of the Leadership Summit. And we hope we've mobilized and empowered you to be the leader that God wants you to be. Today, you might be joining us and seeing a title where I said, hey, I want to teach people how to identify, train, and mobilize leaders. But the really simple way to say that is I want to teach really leading through discipleship. That's a big word. Like you can see all of the scriptures around it, like Matthew 28. You guys probably all know this. There are 11 disciples went up to Galilee to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshiped him. Amen. That's where we always need to start. We need to start by worshiping Jesus because that's what leadership and discipleship is all about. Remembering our good shepherd who teaches us how to lead. But some doubted, right? Like, is that really him? And Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Here's what Paul says in Philippians. Philippians is actually written by Paul to Timothy. This is like one of his last letters. And this is basically, if you're going to read this letter, think he's discipling Timothy. And he says this at the very end of the letter. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things and the God of peace will be with you. Now I want to really sit down on these two phrases. What you have learned and received and heard and seen. And that's going to be very important because here's why. A lot of times we're really good at teaching. Like I can get up on the stage and say, man, if you do this, if you disciple people, you find your one, you can say all the phrases and then go and do it. Like go and make disciples. But how many of us as we're leading, we say those things just like I do. And then we never teach people. We never show them. They didn't get to learn it from us. They just learned it from our mouths. But you see that final word, it says heard and seen. What I want to teach you today is how to identify, train, and then mobilize by being somebody that not only teaches people, but shows people and disciples them into leadership and then sends them out to do the same, just like Paul did with Timothy. Paul also says in 1 Corinthians 11, he says, imitate me. So do what I do. Don't say what I say, do what I do. Just as I also imitate Christ. We're going to be talking about, if you want to draw this in your notes, it's probably in front of you on one of the papers if you're here live. But if you're online, go ahead and grab a journal and just draw a square and then put that little hook on the bottom because that's a really important part that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that happens to me all the time. Before we get into it, I want to tell you about how when I was growing up, I don't know about you, but I loved the movie Karate Kid. Anybody else? It's an incredible, incredible movie. Daniel's son and Mr. Miyagi. We're not talking about the new one with the Smith kid. It's good, but let's go back to the original. And if you remember the storyline, sorry if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it, but I'm going to ruin it for you. It's been out for decades, so you're a little late on the gun if you're waiting for it. But Daniel goes up to this old man named Mr. Miyagi, and he's getting several fights, and Mr. Miyagi over protecting him from a fight one day, he's getting bullied, and he beats everybody up. And then Daniel's like, will you teach me how to fight? Will you teach me karate? And he says, yes. And you'll see that he gets really excited. I'm going to learn how to defend myself. And then the first thing he does, Mr. Miyagi welcomes him to his home. And if you remember this scene, it's really quoted a lot. He gives him a thing and a bottle of wax to wax his car. And here's the problem. Daniel goes, I'm doing chores for you? You're supposed to be teaching me karate. And he goes, yeah, wax on and then wax off. And he does this for a season. You see the frustration mounting up because he's like, you're not teaching me anything. And so he's like, I'm going to bounce. I'm going to get out of here. This isn't worth my time. You're supposed to teach me karate and I'm waxing and doing chores for you. And then Mr. Miyagi says, hey, drop all the stuff. And he kind of tries to start hitting him. He says, wax on, and Daniel waxes on and blocks his hits. Wax off, same thing. And there's this moment where Daniel starts seeing like, whoa, I was doing karate and I didn't even realize it. And the final thing, he goes and fights in a karate match and wins. And Mr. Miyagi is on the sideline cheering him on. And that principle you're gonna see play out in this leadership square. And I'll show you. Here's the first part of the leadership square. If you want to draw at the top of that, just put stage 1. And we're going to be talking about the leader and what I'm going to call the disciple. So that's our Christian word for learner. The leader and the learner. The first stage is this. If you're going to lead someone, you don't give them all the wax stuff, you invite them. And the first way to do that is to do I do, like I'm going to do it. And all you have to do is watch. Just watch me. I'm gonna show you, but I'm gonna teach you as well, but I'm gonna show you how to do it. So just watch me. And you'll see this in the movie Karate Kid, when Daniel's getting surrounded by bullies and Mr. Miyagi comes up and just takes them all out. Daniel didn't do anything. He was getting beaten up, but then he watched Mr. Miyagi take down the bullies. And he's like, I wanna learn from you. Because here's the principle the disciples walking in. They are unconsciously incompetent. Now, what do I mean by that? Have you ever we're part of a church, and have you ever walked up to somebody and they're like, man, I could do that so much better. Like, why is Pastor Phil not teaching that way? Or Chad, he's an okay preacher, but I could probably do it better. Those are really, really extreme examples. But have you ever talked to somebody and they're just like, man, if I was in charge, dude, I would do it better. What that's actually showing me when people say that to me is they are unconsciously incompetent. Now, what does that mean? They don't know what they don't know. They are very, very confident. We're gonna go, and they're gonna go, I can do everything you're doing, because it's easy. It's not hard. What they're actually saying is, I don't know what I don't know. And you as the leader need to be this type of person. You need to be high enthusiasm and high confidence, but you don't need to give them a lot of things. You don't need to be like, hey, I wanted you to experience that. Sorry, this is the disciple. They are high enthusiasm, high confidence, but they don't have any competence or experience. High enthusiasm, high confidence. They're gonna be like, yes, I'm gonna learn stuff. They're excited, but they're unaware of the challenges. And you need to be a leader that's highly directional and high example. Again, you do, they watch, or I do, you watch me is what you're inviting them into. That's the first stage. Now, many of us, we go from there and go, okay, you've seen it, go do it. But we don't need to skip 2 stages in the middle. Now, if you want to go back to your square, the next part is stage 2, and the leadership style is I do, you help. Come alongside of me, and while I'm doing this thing, I want you to kind of give feedback, debrief with me, and I'll even give you a little bit. So this is when he goes, hey, wax on, wax off. He's teaching him how to block though he doesn't know it. So, hey, I'm gonna show you how to do this. You've seen it, but you go and you're gonna start working on it, though you might not know. And here's what I want you to notice. The disciples' mentality is consciously incompetent. What does that mean? They realize that they didn't even know how much goes into what you're teaching them. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but people usually go, yeah, too much, I'm out. You ever had a person that you've invited into leadership development and they've gone, no, it's too much, I was super excited, but now I can't do that. Well, we call that is consciously incompetent. They've just registered that it's a lot more to handle. Some philosopher or a psychologist call this the imposter syndrome. They've realized that they can't do what they thought they could do because it's really hard. It'd be like me saying, hey, I'm gonna preach like Phil every week, easy. And then I get up here, I'm like, dang, that's way harder than I can ever experience. To lead like some of our ministry leaders, like, I don't know what you do, but I could do that. And then you get in, you're like, dude, y'all do so much. To the sound engineers, the cameraman, like, I could run the sound better. It's too loud, it's too small. And then you get back there and you're like, dang, there's like 1,000 things that they're maintaining, trying to help us experience worship. And what happens is, as they start learning that they don't know what they start to know what they didn't know, they fall into what we call the D2 pit, the level 2 pit. And what happens there is they go, I'm out, because they registered, they're in the pit and they're freaking out. And you as a leader need to encourage them and invite them into your life more, like go further and beyond. and then challenge and say, you can get there, and I want to help you. You as a leader need to be, what they're going to feel is low enthusiasm, low confidence. They have no experience and no competence. They're going to discover they don't know. And you as a leader need to be highly directional. We'll get there. Like, think about where you're going to get, and I'm going to help you. Highly discussional. What are you struggling with? Like, let me know. High example and high accessibility. You need to be inviting them into your life, not just saying, hey, we'll meet here and I'm going to teach you more. No. Tell me what about your life. How are you feeling? The next level is this. After you've invited them and challenged them back in, and they say, okay, I trust you, I'm going to come in, is a level 3. And that leadership style is I do, or you do, I help. So you're going to start doing it. So I'm going to give you a little piece of the board, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you feedback. And the disciple mentality is going to be this. They're going to start having to consciously be competent. What that means is you might be like, well, they should start knowing stuff. No, it's like when Daniel got in there and he started doing the wax on, wax off, right? He didn't realize that he was doing it, but he had to think about it. Like when he said wax on, he goes, okay, I'm having to think about how to block. And he's not standing on like the pole in the sea. He's learning, but he's having to think about it. He's having to be conscious competence. And so in that, it'd be like, have you ever driven a car? When you first get in the car, when I got through all the tests, I had to check everything, and then I had to think about, I had to buckle my seatbelt in, and then when you're reversing, you're like really worried about who you're gonna hit. And now when you leave your driveway, it's like habit, right? Because you're past conscious competence, you're in unconscious competence, which is the next slide. As the follower, they're gonna be growing enthusiasm. They're gonna be more excited because they're gonna get to see that they're actually growing. Like Daniel got really excited, like, well, I have been learning. And they're growing in competence, and they have intermittent confidence. Like they're gonna sway back and forth. So this is the rewarding stage. The disciples know what they know, they're thinking about it, and you need to be highly cheerful and encouraging. It's high consistency, high discussion, high accessibility. And you don't need to tell them like, this is where we're going anymore. They're in it with you. The last thing is this, stage 4. It's you do, I cheer. The disciple is finally in this place where he's unconsciously competent. Like he can walk up on a stage, he can get behind a soundboard, he can disciple people, and he can do it without thinking about it. For example, when you get in your car, you don't think about plugging in your seatbelt. It's all habit now. That is unconsciously competent. All of us are unconsciously competent in so many things. And right now they have high enthusiasm. They're highly confident and highly competent. So that they're highly enthusiastic, competent, high experience, and competent. The end goal is in sight. And their disciples, your people that you've trained up, are ready to be mobilized. You've trained them, and now your job as a leader is to cheer them on and then encourage them to find the next person for them to lead. So you need to be high delegation. So it's low direction example. You guys are basically peers at this point. High consensus and explanation. So they still have questions, you're explaining it to them. But the biggest explanation is this, that you would mobilize them not only to lead their thing, lead the practical tasks that you've assigned them to and raised them up to, but you go, who are you going to lead? And you celebrate their successes. Jesus didn't call us to be disciples. He called us to make disciples in Matthew 28. So here's the deal. If you're online, I would love for you to email me at kyle.worsham@livingproof.co and ask any questions. You can also in the chat later be like, hey, what are the questions you might have? If you're live, we would love to answer your questions. Thanks for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed Leadership Summit. Again, be people that not only identify, go through the square, train them up. And we be people that are mobilizers and multipliers of our time talents. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.